All right, my friends, we are here today to talk about the bottlenecks that are affecting Lightning adoption, or as we mentioned backstage, we're here to shit on Lightning, basically. Right?
Yeah,
sounds good.
Entirely.
All right.
It's the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So I'm going to start by asking you, Matt, can you define for the audience, just basic level, what is the Lightning Network and how does it work? And what problems does it aim to solve?
Good question. I don't know entirely. I work on it full time, but no one ever told me. So Lightning is a layer 2 network in Bitcoin designed to enable instant transactions that are hopefully at least somewhat cheaper than on-chain. So we build this network of nodes and channels between nodes. So if, two nodes lock money into a channel between them, and they can update the balance of that money between those two nodes without ever touching the blockchain and in a trustless way, right? So they know that they can get their money back if I have a channel with Junseth and I send a Bitcoin over that channel. I know that Junseth will ultimately get that Bitcoin when the channel closes and I will not. And once we have those channels, then Junseth can open a channel onward and I can pay through that channel to the final recipient, all in a way that doesn't require trust, or at least requires minimal trust. And this lets us pay anyone, and because we can do it off-chain, we don't have to wait for a block, we don't have to do anything like that. We can do these payments instantly or close thereto, maybe max a second, or usually it completes within a second. So the payments are a really nice, slick UX. We can finally actually have usable Bitcoin payments because on-chain is awful and basically unusable. And so now we can actually have a usable Bitcoin.
Got it. Okay.
That's the goal.
So with that established, let's talk about the current state of the Lightning Network. So according to Amboss, we have about 18,000 nodes. We have about 75,000 channels, about 5,500 BTC locked up in the Lightning Network that we know of. Shinobi, what other measures would you use to kind of define the Lightning Network in terms of adoption, organizational adoption, things like that?
That's a really difficult thing, and that's kind of the whole point. You're not supposed to know what's going on in my channels, but really just channel turnover, like specifically looking at like adoption of a specific wallet, like Breeze, Phoenix, that actually just have a private channel with like a specific provider that connects you to the rest of the network. You can look at like little things like that on the edges, but kind of the whole design and point of the network topology and how it works is you shouldn't be able to get a clear idea of like what adoption is looking like and how much it's being used. Like, we want all of that information pulled off of the blockchain where everyone can see it, because blockchains suck.
Got it. Okay. So let's shift to the main topic of the conversation, which is identifying and discussing the bottlenecks that are affecting adoption. So the first thing I want to dive into is to talk about Lightning privacy. So I think, Matt, if you can sort of take us through some of the issues that you see as someone who works on Lightning full time with things like LNURL, with the gossip protocol. Give us a high-level overview of what's going on there.
Yeah, so Lightning, like Shinobi was saying, Lightning is designed to be this like nicely private thing. We've taken all this data that was on a blockchain, publicly visible, anyone can look at it, and we've put it somewhere else. We've put it in a private channel between two nodes, so no one else can see it, and this should give us nice privacy, right? Just as a side effect of it being off-chain, it not being public, we should nobody else can see what's going on, no one can see who's paying who, in theory. In practice, not so much. So for denial of service resistance reasons, nodes currently, when you open a channel, at least when you open a public channel, if you're a routing node, you're a node that allows other people to pay through you. You tell the world about your UTXOs. You say, hey world, I'm a node, and here's my UTXO, and this one's my UTXO, and that one's my UTXO. So please, do your on-chain data analytics of my UTXOs and track all of my balance and know exactly who I am. Chain analysis. Thank you for your good work.
Matt, what's the extent to which people can do the analysis? Can they only because they can't see traffic actually flowing through you, can they? They can only see the end state and the beginning state of the
I mean,
UTXO.
You're right. It's more complicated. You don't necessarily get data on Lightning itself. Again, in theory, in practice, there are active attacks that you can do. There's lots of good academic research that's showed basically if you're a routing node and you see a payment go through you, if you're chain analysis and you run a big routing node, we don't know if they do, maybe they do, probably somebody does, then you can make a good guess as to where it came from and where it went to. Well, you're not supposed to, but you actually in practice can.
To that end, I think also like an attack vector on that section, or to that end is the fact that Lightning nodes don't make much money. So,
right.
I could very well see a world where someone like chain analysis pays Lightning operators to actually report payments through them, and if they get enough big central actors, they'd be able to aggregate a lot of data that way, figure out where a lot of the payments are going.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Historically, not only that, but like if you're a node and you tell people exactly where your balance is in the channel, it helps other people route through you. Mm-hmm. So you might make more money just telling other people your live balance information, and then they can immediately see when that balance changes and say, oh, yep, payment went through you.
Is the low amount of money that people make on Lightning one of the possibly the biggest attack vectors to Lightning for that?
I don't think it's as huge a deal. I think the like people wanting to sell their routing information is going to be a concern, but a lot of it's either a large entity like a business who wants to use Lightning to pay people as their customers paying on their customers' behalf or accept payments on their customers' behalf, doing as a part of their business operations, so they don't really care if they make a lot of money on it.
Yeah.
Or it's hobbyists who are just doing it for shits and giggles, right?
But I mean, isn't that kind of the problem though? Like, if you really want a sizable return from a Lightning operation, it's economies of scale. Like, you're gonna do that by having that massive node with a bunch of liquidity. And when you wind up in that central position in the network, well, tee-hee-hee, I see like 20% of everything flowing through me and I can make more money with that. Like, yeah, I think you're entirely right, Junseth.
Well, having run a Lightning node for more than a year and a half-ish, maybe 2 years now. It's been interesting to kind of watch the data I get, watch sort of the incentive models. I don't make any money on it.
What? Wait, sorry, I have to interrupt. I know for a fact you've made dozens of dollars.
Dozens. Until I tried to close channels.
Well, that was your mistake.
And those channels, and $2,000 worth of Bitcoin are stuck in them. So every dollar I made, I've lost.
That's on you.
But I do think, as I look at Lightning, it seems like the incentive model is to see a lot of centralization of, people need to be able, this scale has to be large in order for someone to make any money. Yeah. And it just seems to me that there's going to be and I'm not actually a critic of centralization in certain aspects of Bitcoin, but it just seems to me that we are going to end up with large places, large honey traps of data where a lot of this information is just going to be sucked up because they're PayPal or whatever, they're doing KYC and they need to pull that data and sell that data for part of their financial operation.
Like, absolutely.
Economically, the centralization is just a necessary direction to have that economic efficiency. But the trick there is, okay, if that's going to happen, then people like Matt here need to shake some heads and actually start working on, managing the flow of information across that network, like things like multi-path payments, moving from HTLCs to PTLCs, like doing everything you can so that even though everything's running through these big central entities at the end of the day, you are removing a lot of the information they can glean from that.
Right, and there's things we should be doing. You're right, there's things we absolutely will eventually, when we get around to it, to improve the state of things. You mentioned PTLCs. PTLCs are great because it says that it allows, if one node forwards a payment through another node, you can't through 2 hops to another node, you can't necessarily always identify that, like, yes, this is the same payment. They're actually decorrelated, so they have a different hash. So they're not necessarily as connected to each other. You can just do timing and value analysis to see that, like, oh, well, it was the same amount and a few hops later. So that's something we absolutely need to do. We need to do, better routing so that we like take more hops. Like there's fundamental trade-off between like I want my payment to succeed and succeed quickly, and I want my payment to be private by routing it through more nodes on the path to the destination, so that there's more people who might have to be involved to figure out where the destination is, which currently is never done because payments otherwise would never succeed or never succeed quickly. But somewhere we need to go to get to that point where we really think about privacy.
Yeah, it's a cat and mouse game. Like you have the natural incentives of the economics to, just centralize more and more. So you need to look at how you coordinate messages across the network and just peel off all the data that they can actually use to de-anonymize you.
Right. So we've shifted over to kind of talking about reliability. So you mentioned HTLCs versus PTLCs. Let's take a moment and talk about some of the issues that have been happening with force closed channels and what's going on there.
You want to talk about the pain of force closing?
Yeah, no.
So as someone who's experienced this recently.
Well, I did recently, but thank God not in the last few weeks, because that would have been a very expensive problem for everybody involved.
And the reason for that is because
fees are way up on the network. So, the way that it works is a Lightning channel. If you're not super familiar with Lightning, every Lightning channel is essentially 2 transactions waiting to happen. The first one is to open the channel, and then there's one sometime in the future to close the channel. And if the person's nice, you'll have a little bit of coordination as to when that happens, the close. And you obviously get to decide if they're using part of your liquidity when it opens, in part. So it's easy. You can have low fees on one end, but on the other end, I think the network basically decides what the fees for a closed channel are. Am I right about that?
Well, I mean, like the Bitcoin network. Right?
Yeah,
when the fees go up, you got to pay more to get on chain.
You don't hit close and then go 1 Satoshi per VByte and then just kind of let it close whenever it can.
No, yeah, well, your node will try to make sure there's a fee that can.
So in the last few weeks, the fees have been anywhere from 20 sats per VByte to like 600.
Right.
It's been absurd. So recently, a lot of the Lightning Network people that came on probably a year to a year and a half ago were running their Lightning networks on Raspberry Pis. And those only have so much memory, and I think a lot of those probably filled up recently. It's about as long as it took for my node to fill up that was run on a Raspberry Pi, and that causes their node to crash. And so I think that there's been a large number of people who had low liquidity nodes and probably themselves care a lot more about that money than someone with like 1,000 Bitcoin. Their channels have kind of been forced closing a lot on the network.
And especially, there's been issues with. There's been all kinds of reasons for it, right? There's that. There's like just issues with the way nodes have been written in the past, like some software need like bugs,
compatibility with channel
compatibility.
stuff. Yeah.
There's all kinds of issues that are slowly being fixed. It's being improved upon, but there's still things, and especially when you go suddenly from no fees to high fees, we just. All these bugs surface all of a sudden, and then all these force closes happen, all these people on our Pis that have been a little slower nodes, a little slower CPUs, whatever, they've been getting the bulk of it, and those are the folks who are like, well, I've made dozens of dollars, and now I spent $10 doing a force close, and I might just give up on this whole Lightning
thing.
thing.
That's what I was going to say is like when you open the channel, you never think to yourself, boy, I'm going to close this channel at the worst time possible. Right. But Lightning forces, if the other person who's in your channel decides that they're going to close the channel at the worst time possible because maybe you're a shitty channel partner, or maybe they're Wallet of Satoshi or something. I don't actually know if Wallet of Satoshi does this, but maybe they want to move their liquidity somewhere else, and your 16 million Satoshis don't do anything for them, so they close it. Like if they choose the worst time ever in the history of the blockchain to do that, then you're just charged.
Right.
You're just going to lose that money. And that could happen, you might have 50 channels that decide to do that, and that's very expensive for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a much bigger elephant in the room when it comes to Lightning and high fees, and that's the dust limit and HTLCs. If fees go up to like...
Wait, so can you take a moment and describe exactly what that issue is, just for the audience?
Well, just an HTLC or a PTLC is essentially just a new output in your channel state that says if you have the pre-image to this hash, you can claim this payment. And if not, a time lock will expire and whoever forwarded it can claim it back. And so that's how you actually route a payment atomically and trustlessly across multiple channels. But if you're trying to route $10 across the network and fees are $10, well, the whole reason you create that HTLC in the first place is so that you can trustlessly enforce that payment or like your part in it if somebody stops cooperating in the middle of it. Well, if the fee is $10, you're gonna pay $10 to claim your $10. Like there's this dynamic of fees going up, not only have problems with opening and closing channels, but you can't take advantage of trustlessly routing a payment below that threshold either, unless you're just being economically irrational. So there's kind of that dynamic of either payments below that limit kind of become trustless, or trusted.
Trustful, yeah.
And there's things you can do like just zap like $1 at a time, and if it doesn't arrive, like stop and find another route because somebody on the previous one was cheating. Or we need to find a way to completely rethink how we actually enforce routed payments on chain if that's necessary.
Right. There's just no way to send less than prevailing Bitcoin fees in any scheme. You want to say without having some kind of trust. It's true. That is how Lightning works, and it's kind of fundamental too. You can batch payments, but that's kind of it. Like at the end of the day, you're sending whatever the Bitcoin fee is. Well, you're gonna have to trust somebody unless you want to pay 100% fee for whatever you're trying to send, which no one does. So Lightning is absolutely trusted for under the prevailing Bitcoin fees.
And yeah, that's a really, really hard problem to solve because an HTLC, hand waving, like, here's my brain fart idea. Well, can't we all just bundle every HTLC you're forwarding into one thing? Well, no, because each one has a unique pre-image to that hash lock. Right. And just like informationally, theoretically, like you can't combine those and condense that into a small thing that covers all of them. So yeah, like that's really a deep problem where it's okay if we can't find some really inventive solution, then lower value payments are going to be trusted.
There's similar griefing attacks too, where Lightning nodes have to limit the amount of dust payments going through them, right? If somebody sends 500, I guess the limit's 400. If someone sends 400 of these $10 payments through your node, and the fees are $10, so you just ignore all of them and you make them trusted, well, all of a sudden those starts adding up quickly, and suddenly you could actually lose a lot of money. So there's other denial of service limits on smaller value payments through the Lightning Network, and this causes smaller value payments to sometimes be even less reliable than large value payments. So it can be an issue there.
So I want to shift us over to a slightly different topic, which is the issues or challenges around adoption. So I would argue that one of the things that's super important to making Lightning more useful for as many people as possible is kind of download and go mobile apps. And there are two challenges that I see with that strategy. There's basically offline receiving and management of inbound liquidity. And when you're talking about offline receiving with a mobile app, it often introduces increased responsibility for LSPs, that's Lightning Service Providers. And I'm curious to hear the panel's thoughts on how that relates to potential censorship and privacy, and whether that's a reasonable trade-off. If there's other things that we can do to address those issues.
Well, I think the beauty of Lightning, like Bitcoin, is that you can run your own node. And in that way, there's uncensorable payments in that way, right? But I guess it doesn't help with offline receiving. But I don't, in terms of adoption, because that was the original question, I tend to think that there's not going to be a lot of normal people running nodes. I think most people are going to be using centralized wallets. And I think the node operation is going to be for those that do experience things like censorship. So if censorship becomes a problem, unlike Twitter or Facebook, we have a backup option for everybody. It's not an ideal one, but it's okay.
Got it. Matt, what about you?
The mobile non-custodial wallets have gotten a lot better to the point, I agree, like people actually running a node in Raspberry Pis, that's your enthusiast crowd, right? That's the people, either you have a huge stack of Bitcoin and you're gonna try to become one of these big nodes that routes a lot of payments, or you're gonna like have your Raspberry Pi and you're gonna lose your money on fees, but maybe you'll come out marginally ahead and make your dozens of dollars.
You will not. I promise you will not.
But the mobile non-custodial, they're like your phone, your Phoenix, your Moon, your whatever that have a Lightning channel between you and a service provider, but on your phone, not trusting anyone, you're just not routing anybody else's payments. We're getting there. We still have a lot of problems to solve. You mentioned like offline payments. Lightning fundamentally doesn't work unless you're online. You can't receive a payment while your phone's offline, which is obviously somewhat of an issue.
You can minimize some risk though on some of the offline stuff. Like there's people, like service providers are going to always be online. So what I do, for example, is with my node, I would have, if someone wants to pay me, I generate a receipt in Wallet of Satoshi or one of these other wallets, and then later on I just forward it to myself if I need to.
Right, you can do that. We can also, there's work on the spec side of things to develop basically just signal when you're online. Like if somebody wants to pay you, they like signal intent to pay you, and then like when you're online, you say like, hey, I'm here, you can pay me now, and then you complete the payment. So there's things we can do, and we'll get there on those things. But it is still, it's still developing, and it is still a ways away. And I mean, you mentioned liquidity though, like operating the other side of that node, the service provider that's deciding, how big a channel to open to you, because that's ultimately how much you can get paid at a time. And managing that liquidity is a really hard problem. Like if somebody shows up and installs my app on their phone and then like receives a 1 sat payment, like I'm not gonna, like, do I want to pay my $10 fee to open a channel to you for your 1 sat payment? Like, all right, if I know you're gonna get paid again and I can charge you a fee later, like maybe that makes sense. But like, what do you do in the short term? How do you make that decision? And then once you do get paid later, do I put more money in the channel? Like, it's a really hard problem. No one solved it, and it is gonna cause Lightning fees for these kind of mobile non-custodial wallets to be complicated and potentially high as people figure out the right models.
For non-scaled
Junseth, I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump in.
Oh, you're good, you're good.
There's only a minute left. I wanna just take like 10 seconds for each of you and describe why Lightning is fucking awesome. Because I know all of us are extremely excited about Lightning. Matt, you work on Lightning full time. That's your only job. So what is it about Lightning, given all the stuff we just said, that is so exciting to each of you? Let's start with you, Shinobi, and then we'll go back around.
It's better than a blockchain.
Nailed it. Matt.
Bitcoin UX sucks, and Lightning is actually kind of usable now.
Love it. Junseth.
Actual instant payments that are, finalized.
Yeah, it's instant, man. Like
it really is.
Paying with Bitcoin is like, all right, I sent this transaction. I don't know if I sent it to the right place. I'll find out in 10 minutes if I'm lucky, maybe 20. I don't know when the next block is. Like, what the hell is this? Who built this UX? It's awful.
Shitcoiners regularly tell us that we don't know the problems with Lightning, and they'll tell us things that really aren't problems.
Oh no,
but we know them all.
Know.
We know the problems with Lightning.
We spend all our time shitting on Lightning.
They are voluminous.
And yet they show up and argue other problems that aren't real problems. It's great. It's great.
That happens all the time. So I think, to me, the instant payments it's the dream. I said many years ago on Bitcoin Uncensored that the only transaction time that matters is 0 seconds.
Right.
5 minutes is no better than 10, and 2 minutes is no better than 10.
Right.
So instant payments is amazing.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. That's all. That's it.
Welcome back. I'm Pete Rizzo, editor at Bitcoin Magazine. We're here again at the Bitcoin Magazine Live Decks presented by Marathon here at Bitcoin 2023, joined by a new round of special guests now. Ran Neuner, CEO of Crypto Banter. To his left, Aaron, co-host and founder of Altcoin Daily. And to his left, Austin, founder and co-host of Altcoin Daily. So we just heard about some of the challenges with scaling Bitcoin for adoption. But I want to turn it to the table. There's a lot of crypto people here for the first time that I'm talking to. They're maybe inscribing things on Bitcoin, but they're also building trust minimized auctions. They're building token protocols on Bitcoin. What do you guys think about maybe these newcomers who are realizing the power of Bitcoin for the first time? Ran.
Well, you can't ask me about the newcomers because I've done a whole about turn coming back to Bitcoin. So I'm a big Bitcoin believer. I've always been a big Bitcoin believer. For the most part of my crypto journey, Bitcoin has been the ultimate, the lion's share of my portfolio. But I have always been a believer in innovation, and I always thought that one use case for this amazing technology called blockchain wasn't going to cut it. And so I went looking for other use cases, and because they didn't exist on Bitcoin, I found them in places like Ethereum and Solana and everywhere else. I think this new movement into Bitcoin brings innovation back to Bitcoin and makes Bitcoin a new place to be. And actually, to be honest, I was on a podcast the other day, and you know, the interviewer asked me, she said, what do you think the narrative for the next bull market is going to be? You know, and I thought about it because I wasn't expecting that question. I said, I actually think that the narrative for the next bull market is Bitcoin.
Wow.
Which is, you know, that's like,
I mean, incredible to hear. Aaron, I want to turn over to you. How much of this is fear versus opportunity? Mix of both?
Yeah, great to be here, Pete. You know, I think when new people come into the space, they're looking, obviously, when they come in initially, they're looking for that price appreciation. Bitcoin offers that to a certain extent. At least you don't lose your money because it's here cycle after cycle. But beyond that, people get excited around culture. People get excited around different things. So with NFTs, ordinals coming to Bitcoin, it's not just about hodling hard money. Now it's about the fun of pictures, being in cool clubs. And, you know, if that's, we're just at the start of this, but I think it's, you know, very much a net positive.
Why don't I turn over to you, Austin? Whole generation maybe waking up. Is part of this that they were maybe told that they couldn't do some of these things on Bitcoin, and they're finding out that you can?
Pete, Bitcoin Inc., thank you for having us. I think that the two biggest, always what leads adoption is narrative and story. Bitcoin is obviously the most decentralized and most censorship resistant. So going back to 2020, when they printed all that money, we realized, damn, the current system is showing cracks. To today, when we're seeing more centralization from big tech or big government or whenever, the narrative for Bitcoin is stronger than ever. So I think that's what's leading this adoption.
Well, guys, we'll come right back after the break. We're going to send it back to the main stage for a panel, Steady Lads, a macro conversation with Bitcoin Magazine pros Dylan LeClaire. For now, stay tuned. Almost done here in Miami, but plenty more to come. Right back in a few minutes.
Thank you, Miami, for the last 3 years in this amazing city. The whole world shut down, but Miami welcomed us with open arms. We want to show Bitcoin to the whole world. We are taking the conference on the road to set the stage for Bitcoin in a new city. Nashville. Bitcoin 2024 is coming to Nashville in Tennessee, a city that is known as a music and freedom city. Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville from July 25th to 27th.